This is the episode where Taxi figures out exactly how funny Jim can be, and then never lets him off the leash.
We're on threads of hope, trying to weave us a basket. I suppose you got that one too, huh?
No, I bet about 500.
That's all right, honey. I don't get them all either.
Up to this point, Taxi has flirted with greatness more than it's actually committed to it. You get flashes, a great Louis episode here, a strong Alex moment there, but it hasn't quite put everything together at once. This episode does. It takes a character who's mostly been used as an occasional punchline and centers the story around him. Sometimes taking the weird guy and giving him too much time on screen can flatten the character's goofiness or mute the joke, but not in this episode. They nailed it. And with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the second episode of the third season of Taxi titled Tony's Sister and Jim, written by Michael Leeson and directed by James Burrows. So let's see how this one stacks up, starting with the episode overview. So we're going to open this episode with Louis trying to get a guy that's already in his cage with him to fan him because the garage is really hot. Naturally, the guy is unwilling to do that, and Louis is going to complain that he's making it racial. And what's funny here is I could definitely see Louis asking anybody from any nationality, race, or creed to fan him. But this is a big nothing burger, as next we're going to get Elaine bursting in, saying how she's not a mom that comes and tells boring stories about her kids. And Alex and Bobby are going to aggressively praise Elaine for exactly that, to the point that Elaine's going to get kind of annoyed and walk away from them. So she's going to try again with Locke by asking if he likes kid stories. And Locke is going to start telling a story about when he was a kid. And Elaine's going to be like, are you telling a kid story about yourself? And he's going to be like, well, yeah, I'm a bachelor, so I'm the only kid I've got. So we've started off with kind of a dumb joke that didn't work, and then a seeming plot starter that didn't start a plot. Don't worry though, Tony's going to bring the plot. You see, his sister has moved back to the city from Spokane, Washington, and everyone seems to be interested in meeting her. But there's only one guy from the garage that Tony wants her to spend any time with, and that's Alex. He's gonna try to convince Alex to date her. And when Alex starts expressing some concern, Tony's like, I know what you're worried about, but she's all grown up. She's been married and everything. Then he sort of leans in as if he's telling Alex a secret and says, I doubt she's even a virgin anymore. And then, it's okay with me if you want to go to bed with Monica. All right, Tony. Wow. Then Locke is going to come up and be like, I want to crack at Monica. But Tony is not okay with that. It's gotta be Alex. And after he walks away with Alex, Monica shows up. And it's Marge from The Simpsons, which I thought was kind of fun, Julie Kavner. Anyway, the first person she runs into is Louis, who acts like Louis, offering rub downs. So basically she's like, fuck off to Louis. But then the next person she meets is Laka. And Laka's like, you're Tony's sister? And he says, you know that you and I are forbidden to love? Sort of an auspicious beginning to her time in the garage. And she even looks back at Louis like, I may have actually preferred dealing with you. Then Louis is gonna sort of smile and point and say, next. And when she looks back, she's facing Jim, who is trying to look cool. So we end up getting treated to how Jim would pick up a woman. He says he heard that she's from Spokane. And she's like, yeah, have you been? He says, no. Then there's an awkward pause and he goes, wait a minute, which was already fun, but then he adds, I was born there. At this point, the episode has me. We get a fun sight gag next when Jim uses a bad line on her and Louis is like, good one. So Jim turns to look at Louis and smile like, yeah, I know, right? And she moves past him when he's looking away. And when he looks back, it's like he's a kid who just saw a magic trick. Where'd she go? Although Louis there to help, he's gonna point him in the right direction. Through some more discussion with Jim, we're gonna find out that Monica used to play the flute for the symphony. Jim, in saying that he'd like to see the symphony, ends up getting a date with Monica. Naturally, right after that happens, Tony comes down and introduces Monica to Alex and is really pushing her to go to lunch with him. He won't even let them actually talk to each other because he keeps speaking for Alex. And then he ends up speaking for Monica. So the next thing we know, Tony's at Monica's apartment and he's super eager to hear how lunch went with Alex. His eagerness to get Monica together with Alex is pretty odd. And she tells him she's not all that interested in Alex, that she likes Jim. And Tony's like, no fucking way. You know, as much as I think Tony is a little crazy for his desire to have Monica date Alex, I can also understand why he wouldn't be thrilled with her wanting to date Jim. So she's gonna end up getting a call about a date at the symphony. And because it's the symphony, Tony is convinced that it has to be Alex. But as the conversation continues and the concerns about money and going Dutch, Tony figures out that it's Jim and is not thrilled. But Monica is undeterred. She's gone to the restaurant and is sitting at the table by herself, clearly having been waiting for a while. She ends up writing a note and giving it to the maitre d' to give to Jim if he shows up. But hey, wouldn't you know it, he shows up just then, and the maitre d' hands him the note right in front of Monica. The note says she couldn't wait any longer, but I mean, she's standing right in front of him. And he's basically like, darn, I'm sorry, and starts to leave, and she's like, where are you going? And he says, well, I can't have dinner with you. She's like, why not? He's like, I don't know, and points to the note and goes, you didn't go into it. On top of all this, Jim looks crazy. His hair is wild, but she still wants to have dinner with him. She's ready to forgive him if he has a good excuse. And it turns out he does. Tony was the reason that he was late. Tony wanted him to wait to leave till he could talk to him. And when he does talk to him, he told Jim that Jim can't see his sister after this date. So on to the date, which goes surprisingly well for Jim and is hilarious for the viewer. I mean, we get great Jim bits. Like him saying that he's sorry he forgot to shave. It's just his hair grows so fast. It seems like he shaves and in only a matter of days it grows back. He orders both their food in French, but Monica's impressed that he knows French. But it turns out that he just learned how to say what he wanted to order in French, and then called all over town to try to find a restaurant that would serve it. But she's charmed by this. She ends up touching his hand. And then he's gonna look around like, is everyone seeing this? I'm a man. So the date went really well, but now we're a couple weeks past the date. And Monica has told Jim to keep their relationship secret from everyone. So Tony's coming up to Jim to apologize to him for the way he handled Jim's date with Monica. Apparently it took him 2 weeks to come to this. But he wants to give Jim an opportunity to punch him in the face, which seems a little drastic, Tony. He's like, plant one right here. Jim, confused by this, kisses him. Even though Jim says this makes him feel better, or maybe because of, he ends up slipping up and saying he's headed off to Monica's. Now Tony is all charged up. He's gonna head straight to Monica's to put an end to this. Now Alex, of course, is gonna step in and try to talk some sense into it. He's gonna point out to Tony that Tony is the only person who has a problem here, and Alex is just trying to be a friend to Tony. And this is where Tony really draws the line. We're friends, Alex? You don't even think enough of me to go to bed with my sister. So we cut back to Monica's apartment, and Jim and Monica are playing music together. Jim is blowing in a glass jug, and Monica is playing the flute. And then Tony bursts in and is telling Jim he's gotta go. Obviously, Monica is like, fuck off, dude. But he says, I'm not leaving until Jim does. And Jim says, well, you should get comfortable because I sleep here. And the thing about Jim is that you know he doesn't mean it in an aggressive manner. He's just being sincere. But Tony picks him up like Jim is a surfboard, and he picks him up by his pants and the collar of his shirt. Naturally, Tony is lucky that Jim holds his legs up for him. It's a fun visual, and Tony just ends up carrying him around the apartment. Eventually, Monica convinces Tony to put him down and asks Jim if he's okay. My shorts are riding a little high. That seems accurate. Additionally, Jim is going to say to Tony, you know, Tony, I knew someone like you once. That's it. He just knew someone like him. Then he says something else which doesn't make any sense, and Tony is looking at Monica like, you're saying you get what's going on with him? But Monica says she bats about 500 on understanding Jim, and Jim's like, that's okay, I don't get them all either. But to Monica's surprise, Tony apologizes. Apparently, according to Monica, he never apologizes, even though this whole act started with him apologizing to Jim. But everyone is feeling better now, and Jim is going to give us the moral of the episode. Tony's learned that he can't pick who his sister falls for. Monica's learned that she can't pick who she falls for. And Jim has learned the most important thing of all. He loves being lifted. So we end the episode with Tony listening to the musical stylings of Jim on the jug and Monica on the flute. And then he joins in by blowing on a beer bottle. That's the whole episode, which was fantastic. But let's see how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh out loud. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive in here, I just want to say if you're enjoying this video, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. The story is kind of generic, actually. I mean, Tony's sister comes to town, and basically every guy in the garage wants a crack at her, which is kind of weird. But weirder still is Tony's insistence that she date Alex. Highlighting Jim in this episode is the best move they could have made. But story-wise, there's really not much to it, though it does still have an arc of growth for Tony. I gave it a 3.25. So that brings us to acting. Honestly, the acting is fantastic in this one. Christopher Lloyd is hilarious and he knows his character really well. Tony playing the dumb protective jock is really good. Julie Kavner was great as Monica. No reason not to give this one a 5 in my opinion, so I did. That brings us to dialogue. This is the episode I've been dying to see from Taxi. It was absolutely hilarious. So this is going to be the first 5 for dialogue for Taxi. I loved it. So that brings us to episode coherence. There are maybe a few gripes, like Monica is almost too understanding of Jim, but that's really not a big deal. You like who you like. Honestly, I can't think of anything that would make this incoherent, so I gave it a 5. And that brings us to character relatability. I mean, Tony is actually the only problem for this category, because he's just way too eager for his sister to date Alex. But the chemistry between Monica and Jim was a lot of fun, and before this episode, I couldn't imagine how they would make it so that any woman would be interested in Jim. But they pulled it off. I gave it a 4.25. So some really high scores here for Taxi. Shouldn't have any problem with being in the top 3 tiers, but a good laugh counter would put it maybe in the top tier, the first Taxi episode in the top tier, and it got me 23 times. So there you have it, a grand total of 45.5, which puts it in the top tier, meaning of life. Officially the best ranked episode of the series so far. But as for the series average, it took a nice 0.4 point increase to 26.65, which keeps it as mediocre. But if they keep this level up, they'll get out of that tier before long. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score in the comments. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Taxi episodes or any of my other sitcom or movie ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment. For up-to-date rankings, check out my website at therankpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankpodcast. But I will leave you with this. Why did Jim and Tony get stopped by TSA?
Why is that?
Because they clearly had misunderstood what carry-on meant. Carrying Jim.
It doesn't work.
It's not funny.
You can't do that.
And he says, you know that I...
Cut!
And he says, you know that I are for...
That's okay. Take your time.